So now we are into the fun stuff. We're moving slightly away from cycle animation now on our jump up and down. It's still going to end up being a cycle, but what we're going to do is we're going to have our character, instead of just a straight action where we're going from a low point to a high point, like in the perpetual ball bounce or the double ball bounce, we're now going to introduce a brand new principle called anticipation, which comes before an action, and then we're going to add on another principle on the end of it, brand new one, which is called recovery or reaction. And with these, it's going to require that we have quite a few more key positions. Up until this point, I guess basically we've, aside from the descending energy ball bounce, we've only ever had like 2 or 3 key positions for any of our actions that are taking place. Or in the case of the run and walk cycle, we had 2 primary keys, 2 secondary keys, so 4 keys altogether, and then our breakdowns. So now we're getting into the realm where, because it's no longer a cyclical type of an action, we're starting to get our character moving from one point to another point back here in anticipation. Then the character is going to jump up in the air to a high point, come down, and then recover out of that into a descending energy type of an effect, where the character finally comes to a stop and returns back to their original position that they started into, which would then allow them to cycle back into the action again. So what I want you to do is, hopefully you've got your character in mind. We can still work with the run cycle character or your walk cycle character, either one will do. I'm going to start off on the website. All the previous examples that I've done that are on the website are all short little characters, cute little characters, and so I thought to myself as I was driving in today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do a tall, thin character instead. So and my character is incredibly simple. He's essentially just a cylinder, so I'll just draw his basic body shape here, which makes it a little bit easier. So he's essentially just a cylinder like this with his 2 legs, going down like this. And I want you to draw the character in a 3/4 view. So we've got that perspective plane down at the bottom here, with the vanishing point going somewhere off your page over there. So your legs will be coming on this type of an angle. So it's a 2-point perspective, vanishing points on either side. Character's arms, roughly around to the hips. I'm just going to keep the hands fairly simple here, and you can do the same thing. I don't want you to get into a lot of detail on the character, because we're just going to start off with our basic shapes. If later on, once you've got your basic action going, if you want to go in and start to add some details to your character, you can do it then, but we're not going to do it right at this point in time. So that's the basic shape of my character. This is from a comic book that I used to do. The Zit. This is one of the evil villains. His name is the Festering Boil. He's just got a giant boil on the top of his head here. And he's wrapped in like gauze. He's sort of like a mummy type character because he's wrapped in gauze all over because he's festering. But I'm not going to add all the detail of all the bandages and everything until the very, very end, when I've got all the details and everything done. So he's got his teeth down here. And one of the neat things about this character is his head, upper part of his head is completely separate, and it'll pop off. Every time he got punched, his head would always fall off onto the ground, and he'd just sort of be scrambling around looking for his head. But that'll allow me to do a little bit of overlapping action at the high point of the jump. So there's my character in the standard position that we're going to start off from. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as my basic start off key. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a paired down rough, because I want to be able to allow enough space for the character to jump up in the air. And right now the size of the character does not allow that within the fielding that I've got on this sheet of paper. So I'm just going to tone this down a little bit by maybe about, I don't know, 15–20%. And again, just blocking the character out very, very simply. This is one of the important things, is you have to remember that your character has to be properly fielded. So now we're getting into some layout issues where we we have to start doing some scene planning and thinking ahead of time what exactly it is that we want our character to be doing within the environment that we have. And of course, we always have to be thinking, do we have enough space within the fielding so that the character doesn't end up going out of field? There's my basic eye line and center line down there. So I can leave the character pretty much at that. That would be okay. So this is where I want to start the character off from. Now, I have to start to analyze what is the action that my character is going to be doing. I want my character to jump up in the air, and he's going to jump to approximately this height up here. What I want him to do is, with his feet firmly planted on the ground, and this is the same thing that you'll have to do. I want you to follow the exact same actions. You can modify them slightly, but you can't deviate away. So in other words, your character has to be standing here. They have to anticipate down and slightly back, and then they have to thrust themselves up in the air to the point where they reach their high point. Then they have to drop back down to the ground in the exact same spot and bend their legs and recover back up to this original position here. So what I'm talking about here, as far as not deviating, I don't want your character to do backflips. I don't want kung fu kicks. I don't want the character to be spinning in the air 360 degrees or anything like that. I will allow you little variations where you can have, instead of having both hands thrusting up together, you can do one hand thrusting up and do like a Yahoo type thing where they punch their one fist up into the air. If you want to do a kick with the feet going backwards, that's fine. It just means, you're going to have to modify things slightly. If you want to bring the knees up, so he's doing more of a chest kick type thing, then you can do that as well. But the character cannot advance forward, the character can't fall down and then get back up again. They have to recover in a controlled way back to their original position. All right? So from this position here, what I want to do is I want to take my character down into an anticipation pose. So what we're talking about now is we're talking about our broad keys. All right? This is my first primary key of my start off position. Now I have to think of, where is my character going to anticipate back to? So I want to keep my feet planted on the ground, but with the idea of what I'm doing here is that he's going to be dropping his butt, twisting his chest down, so that essentially his body is going to be sort of in this type of a position here with his head forward like this. So there's the line of action running through his body, which means that I'm going to have to compress his legs, bend his legs down like this, and I'll probably want to bring his heel up off the ground just slightly. So just in a very, very quick gestural pose, that's essentially what I want the legs to be doing. And the arms are going to be thrusting back behind him, sort of like that. And then on the opposite side, again, using my perspective, his other arm would be back in this direction here. So now that we're starting to get into this realm where we're doing more character-driven animation, I want you to begin to start to think gesturally on your drawings and just block out the basic essence of the pose that you want in almost a stick figure way, and then you can start to add on a little bit of the structure and proportion of the character. But this is essentially the way I want your rough keys to look. Okay? Very, very blocked out, no detail, just the basic shapes and the direction of the arms. So now we're starting to get into the area where we're thinking of line of action on the body. Okay, the primary line of action always usually runs from the base of the skull through the spine and down through one of the legs or both of the legs, and sometimes it can also extend out through an arm. But in this case here, we can clearly see the line of action is running through here and ends in the butt, and then we've got a secondary line of action that runs through here in the knee as a C curve. So your lines of action are always going to be either S curves or C curves. And you can see I put a little bit of a modified line here on this part of the arm that's creating sort of a little bit of an S curve in here. Okay? And the reason for that is that the character's arm is swinging up and back into this position here. And this is the point where, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to start the reversal, where his shoulders are going to start to drop at this point here. And so it's like the pendulum swing. Remember the pendulum swing that we did? Where we had the pendulum, as it reached its high point, not its high point, but as it swung up in this direction over here, the curvature was going this way, but then the very next drawing we started to drop this part here down while this part here was still going up. So we ended up with this type of a line taking place, an S-curve. And then as this part continued to drop down, this part reached almost its high point, and then eventually it snapped and went into a reversal this way, and then dropped down, swinging across like this. So this is the same principle here that we're going to apply to our arm. But what I'm doing is I'm just taking a snapshot of this key position here, trying to figure out where is the position of the butt going to be moving. So the butt is moving down and back in this direction here. The head's going to move forward over into this direction here. The arms and shoulders are moving this way. The elbows are going to swing up and around. So they're actually going to loop a little bit here. And the hands as well, when he comes forward, the hands are going to swing back or forward and then back into this position. And the knees basically just drop straight down and forward in this position here. And we've got a little bit of an action taking place here where the heels are coming up. So we have to think about all the different parts of the body and act it out, either mentally visualizing it in our brain, or you actually go out and you start to act it out. So as I said before, with the walk cycle and the run cycle, these are characters that have all the same attributes that you guys have in your body. They are, or conceivably could be, you. So when you're trying to figure out an action, why not go out and actually do the action yourself and figure out how it feels and start to break it down and analyze it, right? That's what we're moving into now. So now we're getting into something a little bit more sophisticated, where we have different parts of the body moving at different times for different reasons and in different directions. So while everything is coming down this way, not necessarily everything is going to happen at the same time. So that means that this is our primary key here. This is where everything ends all together. But when we drop our character from this position here, what I may choose to do is I may choose to keep the head in the in-between way up here and simply drop everything down like this, so my butt goes out first and my knees buckle, but the head's still straight up and down. And then once the butt stops, I'll bring the chest forward and down. And once the chest hits its final point, the arms are still swinging back. So my in-betweens between my two primary keys here and here are not necessarily all at the same point in time. And that's what I want you to start to think of. And I want you to do that on this assignment. I don't want everything just to stop all at the same time. That's where overlapping action also comes into play, is in your overall action of the body. So while this is a primary key, you still have to have secondary keys in between these to describe what part is stopping at what point and where everything is moving. So it's a lot of information that you're going to have to start to think about.